Okay, I want to start off this video by talking about a conversation I had with some professing Christians. This was years ago. We was all sitting around, we was talking about, we was having a conversation. And I remember this one lady saying, she was talking about the people back in the Old Testament. And I remember her saying like, man, they was just like consistently they just kept turning away from God, and stuff like that, right? And years after we had that conversation, I started thinking, could that happen to people nowadays? Stay with me, right? Because look, if you have a relationship with God, who would just want to turn away from a good thing? What would cause somebody to do that, right? Those people are human beings just like us today. I think everybody, and I think the people back then probably would have thought that they wouldn't ever make a decision to, start dealing with idols or start trying to have God, the real God Almighty, in idols, and still have them they probably would have thought that they can do that. And another thing is, some of them look at reading about it and stuff like that from a person in today's time, like the lady, and how she was like, they would just turn. They just consistently kept turning. It was kind of like, come on. But here's my thing, right? What could cause somebody to do that? And whatever caused them to do that back in the day, why wouldn't it be able to cause people to do that nowadays? What would be so special about, would Christians, professing Christians nowadays, be oblivious to doing that? On the surface, I know you would probably say no. I would say no too, right? But I don't think people really truly believe that no. I think that no is conditional, right? Let me, like, for example, were those people back in the day, in some instances, flat out blatantly just saying, I'm done with God? Who would just do that to a good thing, right? So even though they was wrong, they must have had a reason for doing it, right? Look, did they, like in one example in the book of Exodus, right? They talk about like the sounds of war when the people was, they was overheard singing by Joshua. And, they were saying this is not a sound of people being overtaken or whatever. That's the sound of people singing. And that's what they had made an idol. And it was like singing songs. And that's when they got the earrings and put them together. They made an idol out of it. And the people and Aaron and all that, right? Under those circumstances, the people having hard times and going through hardships and stuff, that caused them to turn away from God. But in relation to Christians and Christmas, which this video is about, another thing that can cause people, even if you feel like you ain't just like fully turning away from God, can make you to start trying to have idols and other things or their practices with God, can be certain perspectives, certain traditions, stuff like that, right? But when people now, because people can read the Old Testament, see them turning away from stuff and say, oh, come on, this is ridiculous, right? Or see them trying to, have an idol and the real God at the same time and say, this is ridiculous. As if it can happen to us people today. We're human beings just like them. I think people of that time and this time wouldn't want to leave good, which is God. Aren't we capable of it too? Just like they was? That's why I'm making Christians and Christmas Part 3, because you may be guilty of doing that same thing, right? It's just that even back in the day, maybe they could have had certain perspectives, but in certain instances, man, you got people back in those days who could have had certain perspectives about things, or that's not right. Well, if I just do this, well, if I just do that, this and that doesn't so, there was a time in the Bible where God told somebody to, leave all that people's things. You just keep that. You just leave that alone. Don't take none of this stuff. And he took it anyway. He probably was, I could use this for good. I could, boom, right? And with this Christmas thing, and I talk about Santa Claus and the Christmas tree. If you want, in part 1, I'm not going, regurgitate that. And in part 2, I talk about some reasons why Christians defend celebrating Christmas. And, I gave my thoughts about that. You can have a certain perspective about something, been born into certain traditions, like I said in parts 1 and part 2 and stuff like that, and be then took on these bad spiritual practices, these idol practices, without realizing it, right? Or you can come into the knowledge of the truth and start dismissing it and say it's no big deal, and bam, aren't you doing this? Wouldn't that be the same thing that somebody had done back in the day, right? Or is it because, you know, we're in modern day? Everybody, when they're the one that's in the seat, in the position who can be possibly of doing wrong, you know, it's usually harder for them to see it because they're in that position. Instead of just looking at the situation for what it is. Like I said, right? Like they had sounds of war, right? They were singing. They made their idol and they started singing. That same thing happens with Christmas today. You know, let's not mistake ourselves. Like in part 1, I talk about Santa Claus and, you know, who he is, and, you know, that you got like a false god named Odin, who was the Yule father. And you hear about Christmas being the Yule time, and Santa Claus being referred to as Father Christmas. And, you know, Odin, you know, they got all these similarities between Odin, that false god, and Santa Claus. And I'm going to go through them here, check out part 1. But, and I was talking about how you have, like, sometimes in Greek culture and in Roman culture, you can have different, like, idols or false gods under different names. And I was saying in part 1 that it sounds like Odin is just another false god in a different culture. And here it's Santa Claus, right? And what you hear, you can hear sounds of war in modern day times. All them Christmas songs about Santa. How many, you know, we can't count how many Christmas songs they have about Santa Claus. Like I said in part 1 and part 2 about Christmas tree, oh Christmas tree, you know, talking about them bringing it in their house, and they need to cut it down because they practice tree worship and they used to cut it down, bring it in their house. You got that song of war today. Christmas tree, oh Christmas tree is a praise song about a tree. So yeah, don't mistake yourself into thinking that you can be oblivious to this happening to you too, like it happened to the people in the Old Testament. And that goes for me too, right? But what I would like to hope that I am is open-minded and open-hearted, if, you know, about stuff. And, you know, if I come in to the knowledge of the truth, I'm able to receive it instead of being defensive and have to check myself and let things be what they are. Yeah. Who is Santa Claus? Who is this, like I say, imaginary being? An imaginary being that kids are told are going to come visit them and knows all about them and leave stuff out for their arrival. And get all these songs sung about him when it's this time of year. Is that not singing sounds of war? This whole thing is, people can see those things more clearly. A praise song being the imaginary being coming down the chimney and all that. Like I said in part 1, if there was anything else, you would tell, as a Christian, you would tell people, no, stay away from that. That ain't no good. Let's be real. Just like I said, some of the things that can cause people to start turning to idols, trying to, you know, hold on to God and have their idols at the same time, it can be hardships, and it can be like your perspectives, or things having like emotional attachments to you, being near and dear to your heart. And like I say, if you remove all the good times that have been associated with Christmas, family holiday, older kids, the joy you get from getting a present, giving gifts, all, you know, yeah, you know, it's dressed up in a nice little family friendly package. But what is it? It's blending that bad idols, spiritual practices with Jesus. That's what it is. And if you didn't have all the heartfelt associations with it, you will be able to see it clearly. You know, you wouldn't go for that with anything else. I mean, if we being real. So just let it be what it is. You know, it shouldn't be. You know, we shouldn't, you know, Santa Claus, you know, he posted on everything. Christmas trees posted here, this and that, thus and so. You know, mistletoe stand under this, kiss, you know, all this, you know. And this is not just a Christmas thing, but I think just people, and, you know, I'm speaking to Christians in general, you know, that's just a challenge for us. You know, some things are already near and dear to our heart. Some things might require sacrifice. Something we have to enter what I like to call the righteous unknown. The righteous unknown is a place where you may be uncomfortable. You may not know what's next. It may be something that you're not used to. You might have to tell certain people no. You might not have to, you might have to say, I'm not, I'm not going here, I'm not going there. All that, right? All those things can be uncomfortable and all that. But the one thing you do know is that you're doing the right thing. You just got, and this is not for Christmas, you just got to hop in and write this unknown whenever you got to, in order to align yourself with God's word as often as you need to. And this is one of those times. Because you might have some people who are able to see this type of stuff, like, people, some people can see this stuff clearly with other things, but they can't see it with this or something else. Because the other thing, they don't have as much of a connection, attachment to. They're not part of some type of group that's associated with it. They don't really go out for this day or that day or that, So really, I think people can really see it if they are willing to die to self. Let stuff be what it is. And no, it's not going to be comfortable. No, but okay. Do you have to be comfortable to obey God? Or should we just do it and ask God to help us in that journey? That's what we should do, right? Whether we comfortable, uncomfortable, whether something a walk in the park, whether something not. Hey, we just got to bend and forward our will to God as much as possible. And, rest in him and then walk like that. And whatever got to come with that, just going to have to come with that. Just how we got to do it. Not trying to sound like some type of spiritual tough guy, but that's just what, that's just how it got to be.